As a matter of fact, the average American family is not financially independent because we're not taught to put money to work. Hello and welcome to the Durham Talents channel. My name is Jesse Durham. This will be our 24th and final installment in our book review series on Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. This has been an absolute pleasure for me. I'm going to be starting with page 85 through the end of the book. It's just a couple of pages where Nelson is wrapping up with some points to consider. So seeing as how we're at the end, I would love to see in the comment section below if you have lingering questions or you had a big takeaway from going through this book review series with me. I'd love to hear that. Put that down in the comment section below, please. The first point that Nelson brings up is that there are two sources of income, and he reminds us that either people are at work or money is at work. And if you're anything like me, you were raised to work hard. And we've done that, but perhaps why the average American right now, that average American household, and again, Nelson touches on lots of great things here, the dynamics in a marriage, what that child rearing situation is like, the spiritual, the emotional, the psychological implications, but of course the financial as well, where traditionally there has been a man out working and a mother at home with the family, raising the family, keeping the home, cultivating the family there at the home front. And financially speaking, because people are at work, but perhaps money has not been at work, he just leaves us with the question, could it be a fact that this modern family has no money at work? Is that part of the problem? Is that a wall? Is that an inhibitor to us advancing in abundance financially speaking? I think so. I just had a conversation this week with our second son, Josiah, where he is actively seeking to work and earn, and he's saving for things that he wants to buy. And we were talking about how he could be earning in ways, whether he is actively laying his hands to a certain task or not, because there's worth in working. There is. Michelangelo needed to be doing what he wanted to do with his hands. That was his God-given ability and skill and desire, and he pursued it. But again, financially speaking, could we be further ahead if we put ourselves to work where we wanted to be and we put money to work at the same time? And then couldn't that money at work help fuel what it is that we want to do actively with our time? I would say yes. The second point that Nelson asks us to consider is if at passive income time, and again, he says passive income there, not retirement, doesn't use the word right there. If we knew that we could have a guaranteed return of all the principal outlay into a system, tax-free, to supplement passively income for ourselves later in life, wouldn't we want to do that? And when we arrive at realizing that, yes, indeed, we would want to be able to have tax-free access to passive income later in life, wouldn't we want protected, guaranteed, protected, 100% return of principal? I always think of Warren Buffett's rule number 1, don't lose money. And then his rule number 2 was, if you forget, refer back to rule number 1. Don't lose money. So if we knew that we could have that guaranteed protection, access to that capital, again, tax-free, later in life, wouldn't we want to augment that, scale that, advance that, start earlier, start bigger, grow it, cultivate it? Wouldn't we want to do that? Fully knowing that some folks are going to be doing the deep dive of seriously vetting this concept by reading the book for themselves, watching things like this book review series, watching other stuff on my channel. And no matter who you're going to work with, if you're still vetting this concept, I applaud you and I encourage you to get to the point to where you've seen and watched and read enough to know that this is something that you want to implement. Connect with someone who's going to work well with you, who's doing things the way that you've been learning about by reading this book and watching this type of information for yourself, whether that's me or anyone else. And I'll reiterate a saying that I've heard from James Nethery many times, where he says, it's all conversation until someone writes a check. And again, remember, I'm saying that Nelson is asking these points of consideration as questions. He asked, would you object to putting more money in that type of a system? And he leaves it at a question. So when you get to that point, be about the business of it. The third consideration is that he reminds us of all our money currently going through banks. All of it, not part of it, all of it. All of our money goes through banks. I mean, we even have these direct deposits now, of course, which would not have been the case when Nelson first started sharing this concept back in the 80s. Direct deposit didn't exist. Now it certainly does. Certainly, before that money ever even crosses our hands in the form of a check, it's directly deposited into someone else's business, the commercial banks. So when we recognize that currently all of our money is going through commercial banks, and we catch on to this idea of privatizing the banking function in our lives by owning properly structured whole life policies from mutual companies that pay dividends that have been properly designed for our utilization to implement infinite banking, and we are intentionally directing a portion of our income in the beginning to such policies or a policy, and then we grow that to a system over time, eventually, premium should equal income. And Nelson says it might take the average person 20 years to do that. So that means some will do it faster, some will do it slower. What's true for me at the time of this recording, 2022, my wife and I have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars of premium into a system of policies that we own. We own 7 policies as of the time of this recording, looking to have more before the year is up. It will happen for us, God willing. And we've built this system where we have systematically paid more, and we started with something that was significant for us. A significant portion of our income went to our very first policy, and we've ratcheted that up and dialed that in to where more and more of our cash flow goes through our private banking system. And we're certainly, and have been for some time now, to where the majority of our cash flow is going through our system. So I'm saying this having implemented infinite banking for going on 10 years, and we've tipped the scale in that direction where the majority of our cash flow does go through our private banking system. Again, nodding to the fact that we practice what we preach. We do this. We have personally implemented this concept into our lives and continue to grow and to scale it. So I as well am just trying to encourage you by being an open book. If you want to pursue that perpetual intergenerational dynamic of a family bank, self-sustaining family bank, then that's what it's going to look like. Paying what are for you significant premiums to a policy and then growing that out to a system of policies, because again, you're already doing 100% with commercial banks. So wherever this video is finding you, wherever this message is finding you right now, whether you're vetting this concept, well, learn enough to know that you're going to do it or not. If you've already implemented this concept, is it time to evaluate where you're at in your journey? Do you need to dial some things in? Are there some human problems you need to ratchet up? Do you need to be adding a branch to your family bank? Where are you at? It's a good point of evaluation. Now, the fourth point of consideration involves the government, taxation, and then the exemptions or exceptions that government makes to the taxation that they set up in place to start with. So Nelson talks about onerous taxation. And he just asks us, shouldn't we be curious that the same government that taxes us and then offers these tax qualified plans, these government qualified plans, and then they have exceptions to their own rules, doesn't that make us suspicious that we may be being manipulated? And then here again, I'll use another quote that I've heard from James Nethery. I'd never considered this before when I heard it from him, and it's been some years now, where he asked, if the government can print money or digitize money, which it can, the government can and does, inflation is rampant. Again, at the time of this recording, 2025, just in the past few years, there have been trillions that have inflated the money supply just in these past few years. Trillions. If the government can print or digitize money, why does the government still tax people if they can print money out of thin air? Is that a form of control? Food for thought. And then, of course, it does beg the question, how much of your capital do you want residing in such places versus private property, such as whole life policy contracts? The fifth is that wealth must reside somewhere. And in fact, great time to remind you, and I'll tell you where I'm at in my process of personally implementing this concept and helping clients across the country implement infinite banking. This is the last installment and episode in the Becoming Your Own Banker book review. I've already been looking ahead towards doing a Building Your Warehouse of Wealth book review. If you'd like to see that, let me know down in the comment section. If you think that I should do a Building Your Warehouse of Wealth book review, let me know down in the comment section below. I'm already leaning in that direction, but I'd love to have your feedback. So again, this fifth consideration is wealth must reside somewhere. So naturally that made me think of Nelson's second book, Building Your Warehouse of Wealth. I don't believe that it gets enough attention. And I understand that Becoming Your Own Banker is obviously the perennial place to start and restart. But Building Your Warehouse of Wealth, so good. Money must reside somewhere. Could you put it in real estate? And then what are the pros and cons? Could you put it in stock? What are the pros and cons? Could you put it in mutual funds? Pros and cons. CDs, pros and cons. So there are some places where we are encouraged to put money and we're told that it's saving, but there's actually an element of risk. Stock would be an example. So some people say, well, save 10 or 15 or whatever % in your 401k. Well, that's tied to the market. Is there risk there? Could it go down to zero? Yes. So that's not saving, that is investing. So I'm just trying to clarify yet again that there is a difference between saving and investing. And the element that differentiates is risk. If you are saving money, there should not be risk. If you are investing, there may be, and then there may also be an upside, of course. Now, when you look at the pros and cons of places, and there I'm just generically speaking, not necessarily even, because I believe that the properly structured whole life policy from a mutual company that pays dividends, that's been specifically designed for the intent and purpose of infinite banking, is the ideal financial entity. Life insurance is not an investment. It is an asset. So it is going to check more boxes than real estate, stocks, mutual funds, bonds, CDs, fill in the blank. It's going to check more boxes. It's going to have many more pros than those other entities have pros. And the cons will be essentially limited to your behavior, which is the good news and the bad news. Again, I've used the car analogy here before. If you and I are in the same car, you take great care of your car, maintain that car, doing the oil changes, tire rotations, etc. And I dog my car, but we started out with the same make, same model. We both had an identical type of car. My behavior affected that entity. Much like our behavior is what's most important, and that's where Nelson started in the book. I'm just reminding you, since we're here at the end, Wealth must reside somewhere. The properly structured whole life policy is the ideal financial asset. It's appreciating, guaranteed, liquid, tax advantages, legacy move because of the death benefit, hedge against inflation. It's got characteristic after characteristic after characteristic that make it the ideal asset, more than a dozen of those. Now, all that to say, and Nelson says this best himself, he says, from this base of financial operation, you can do any of the other things in life that you want to do, that you choose to do. So, can you have the foundation of a system of private contracts that you own, and you can leverage those assets to make savings, build up somewhere else, or investment somewhere else, or fund a business, or just fund your lifestyle? Yes, and absolutely. Yes, and absolutely. So it's not even that you have to choose, because I think that everybody should do what they want to do. Nelson said, when you know what's going on, you'll know what to do. If you know and have experience and connections and a gift and a track record in some area, say it is real estate, beautiful. You can enjoy the foundation of a private banking system and that because you've got access to capital in a tax advantage situation, et cetera, et cetera. For that purpose, also, you get to do both. And you can do it infinitely. The sixth point of consideration is the reminder that we finance everything. So we all start out at zero, let's say. And if we finance with credit, that means we go below zero. We owe someone else. If they qualified us, according to their terms and conditions, we're probably providing some form of collateral, filling out their paperwork, etc. We go below zero. We owe them a principal amount plus interest. And they're going to make a great living off of us. And when we finance that way and we get to the end, there's a zero. So if we pay all of that back off, principal plus interest, we arrive at zero. The second method of finance is cash. So there's credit, then there's cash. Cash is we forego purchasing something so that we can accumulate. And we build. And when we have enough to pay cash for what it is that we want, we liquidate that amount. It is gone forever. That time is gone. That time value of money is gone. There's no EVA. We liquidated that money. Those dollars accomplished that one task for us, and they are gone from us forever, never to provide value furthermore. Those are the two ways of conventional finance. There are no exceptions. Everything is financed. Enter infinite banking, and we experience that third C, compounding. Not credit, not just paying cash, but compounding. We can experience a constant upward growth trend on a pool of capital that we have access to, with all the advantages that I was mentioning just a moment ago. But we can experience compounding. Remember, everything in your life, everything, there are no exceptions, everything is financed. You will either pay someone else interest or forego the opportunity to earn interest that you could have, unless you go the infinite banking route. And then the seventh and final point of consideration is our need of finance. Nelson does remind us that while we are using whole life insurance, which has protection, it should be specifically built and designed for the purpose of banking ability. So that will typically minimize the protection, the coverage, the death benefit, to be able to maximize the cash value. Now, every case is different. I could just as easily with one client be talking about the base only type policy that they want versus one with a much higher liquidity, much higher cash value, just depending on so many factors. So I don't have a cookie cutter approach to this. I believe that the individual should have an individually designed policy for them, their intents and their purposes. But all that to say, too, that even when you maximize the policy design for the bankability of that policy, eventually, by implementing infinite banking and using the policy to do so, you are manipulating, you are actively contributing to the growth of that policy. By paying extra PUA premiums, as we've discussed, that's going to grow the death benefit. You pay more premium, the death benefit goes up. And inherently, then the cash value goes up. And you also make yourself eligible for larger dividends by paying that additional premium. And when you grow that and scale that and repeat that process over a lifetime, you could eventually end up with more death benefit than you could have originally even been underwritten for in the first place. Meaning if you start out with a death benefit of a certain amount, and that grows and grows and grows and grows because of, again, I'll point back to our behavior, then there's no telling where you can end up as a legacy move with the death benefit that you're creating, all while accounting for your need of finance in the here and now for your whole lifetime. And again, doing so in a way that facilitates the growth, the existence of an intergenerationally implemented family banking system. So you can get both. Now, there is an epilogue. We just covered the points to consider on page 85. There is an epilogue on page 86, and the last sentence caught my attention. Nelson says, in fact, if a person obeys the principles outlined in the book, principles being, think long range. Don't be afraid to capitalize. Don't do business with banks. Be an honest banker. Rethink your thinking. Virtually a sixth one that Nelson gave us before his passing was to prepare for windfalls. We do talk about a self-sustaining system here. These principles, if you'll implement these principles, your personal real-life results can be vastly improved over the examples given in this book. So again, this is the infinite banking concept. We all can take what Nelson has given us, adopt these principles, use these ideally designed products, and then be active in implementing the process of privatizing our banking, and there's no telling what results can look like for us and ours to come. So my encouragement to you at the end of this book review series is to, if you've not seen Nelson Nash's documentary, it's called This Is Nelson. You can find that documentary online. If you've not seen that documentary on his life and his work, I would encourage you to watch that. Nelson's not here and with us. He's in glory. And let me just repeat that if you'd ever like to have a conversation outside of infinite banking, I'm open to that as well. That is the more important conversation. He said it. I feel the same way, so I'll say it. But that documentary does exist. We can get to know Nelson better and where the work came from and how it's affected people by watching that documentary. I would also encourage you to check out his second book, Building Your Warehouse of Wealth. And then at the end, after the glossary of terms and Nelson's biographical information, he does have a list, and it is a serious list of recommended readings. I've not read all of these books yet myself. I've made my foray into them, and I'm continuing to learn and to grow myself. But that's all from the Becoming Your Own Banker book as well. His recommended readings. I think that's very neat for us to be able to see and read behind the things that influenced Nelson that led him to writing Becoming Your Own Banker. I think it's terribly interesting. And I'll tell you this, I've really tried to, from this channel, from this book review, I've really tried to begin with the end in mind, meaning that if you're one of my children, if you're one of my grandchildren, one of my great-great-grandchildren, I've been seeking to document my own trajectory, my own experience with infinite banking, how it's impacted and changed my life, and do it in a way that it will be a blessing to you and to the clients that I work with and to the people that I'll never get to know or meet that may come across this information. And it's even been helpful for me to bring this and to verbalize my experience and to verbalize what it is that I would have liked to have had communicated to me even earlier on in my own journey of implementing the concept. So wherever you're at in your journey, there is a level higher. This is the infinite banking concept. I believe that there's no end from this point moving forward. And if we get to connect around infinite banking, I'm very excited for that. If we get to connect on other levels, I'm even more excited about that. And my hope is that you will live and leave a lasting legacy. To connect with me for a private consultation call, you can find me at durhamtalents.com. If you've had value from this book review series, I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel where I have many other series on frequently asked questions, myths, mysteries, misconceptions around whole life insurance and infinite banking, interviews, and many other. You can subscribe to the channel here. My name is Jesse Durham, and I hope that you live and leave a lasting legacy. Have a great day. Take care.